This is Movies on TV Podcast Industries, and we're back with our spoiler-filled discussion of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
I miss you so much. And maybe if you open yourself up to it, there's a possibility.
I don't think so, Quinn.
Quill.
I don't think so.
Well, what I'm trying to say...
Peter, you know this is an open line, right?
What?
We're listening to everything you're saying.
And it is painful.
And you're just telling me now?
We were hoping it would stop on its own.
But I switched it over to private.
What color button did you push?
Blue! For the blue suit!
Oh, no.
Blue was the open line for everyone.
Orange is for blue.
What?
Black is for orange. Yellow is for green. Green is for red. And red is for yellow.
No, yellow is for yellow. Green is for red, red is for green.
I don't think so.
Try it then.
Hello!
You were right.
Welcome back, fellow defenders, and Jubs, I guess.
Or Jibs.
Jibs, maybe Jibs.
But it sounded a little Ewok-y to me.
It did. We're back on TV Podcast Industries with our movies podcast back in the MCU, in the cinema once again, talking about the 33rd movie in the MCU.
Wow.
James Gunn's final Guardians movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow defenders. I'm one of your other hosts, John.
We've been on a bit of a break, as you probably are aware. We've been away on holidays, myself and John. We have returned to the cinema as our first podcast after being away for 2.5 weeks. And of course, unfortunately, that means we've chosen a date that Chris can't join us for our podcast. So we don't have all three of us here for this one. It's Chris's anniversary today. So very happy anniversary to Chris.
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy anniversary, Chris.
But we are going to work around him. Myself and John are going to record our thoughts on the podcast. And we're going to introduce a little Chris's Corner where he'll give us his thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 as well.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah, so we'll pause for that later on in our podcast. But it's just me and John back from our holidays, all sunned and tanned and relaxed to discuss the brand new movie from Marvel.
Yes, I don't know whether my brain it was able for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It was still in just kind of relax mode, sort of expecting someone to sort of put a margarita in my hand kind of thing.
Yep. That was a really good benefit of being.
But it was a great movie. I loved it. Excellent. To be honest. So,
excellent. Good stuff.
Spoiler.
Preview of your thoughts. But of course, as John mentioned there, this is our spoiler-filled discussion. So if you haven't seen the movie, go out and see it, watch it, and you can hear our thoughts after you finish watching it. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast as well, you can subscribe to that by going to our brand new website, tvpodcastindustries.com. Pop on there, and we have subscription options for all of our shows, including our movies-only podcast and our main podcast, TV Podcast Industries, where you'll get access to everything that we're covering. But it's been a little while since we've been in the MCU. We did cover Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania earlier on this year, and then before that, I think the last thing we covered was Guardians of the Galaxy, the holiday special from last year. So not that long since we discussed the Guardians of the Galaxy, though.
No, not at all, but much preferred getting a full installment of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Definitely.
With Volume 3 here. Rather than as such the holiday special, which I guess served to introduce a swole Groot that becomes even swoller by the end. Yeah. And
I think he's being called King Groot, the version that we see at the end of the movie.
Maybe, or Monster Groot or Hulk-like Groot, for sure. But yeah, that as well as ultimately just the fact that nowhere is their base of operations.
Yeah, it's the new home. Yes. Yeah, that was the first introduced in the holiday special. And interestingly, James Gunn said he was in talks for the first Guardians of the Galaxy 10 years ago last week.
Wow.
Isn't it amazing to think how long it's been that this series of Guardians of the Galaxy has been since its first inception to the end of this trilogy? It's 10 years on from that first discussion that James Gunn had. Loads of things have happened at the time. And an interesting entry for Guardians of the Galaxy. It's the longest time from one episode to the next episode. It's been 6 years. Yeah, exactly. It's been 6 years from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We thought Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness was a long period of time in between the two. I think that was 5 years and 10 months. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is 6 years since the last one. So it only just beat it out, but that is interesting. I know we've had a lot of the Guardians in the other movies in the MCU, and the Avengers movies, we've seen them. And of course, in the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, reintroducing them again. But quite a long time since that last movie.
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess all that cameoing that they're doing, sort of doesn't make it feel quite as long. Same for Doctor Strange as well.
Exactly. Good stuff. Well, let's get into our discussion of the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Yes, Derek, what are some of the movie details?
There's not very many movie details to give out in this one. The movie, of course, is written and directed by James Gunn, who was the writer and director of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 and 2. Of course, Slither, The Suicide Squad, his TV show Peacemaker, and of course, the Dawn of the Dead remake as well. So lots of great movies from James Gunn in the past.
Yes, and soon to move on to DC. To create their world anew.
Yeah, absolutely. Heading up the DC movies. And I think I would say they're in pretty good hands. I hope that they won't just give it all a James Gunn sheen and everything will look like a James Gunn movie, because he has a great style, but I can't imagine an entire universe based on that. But yeah, they're in good hands. He knows what he wants to do. Anyway,
definitely,
he's got a good vision, so that'll be really interesting. For this movie, of course, the cast overall, we have Bradley Cooper back as Rocket Raccoon. We have Karen Gillan back as Nebula. Dave Bautista, Drax the Destroyer. Pom Klementieff back again as Mantis. Sean Gunn playing Kraglin. We have the introduction of the High Evolutionary, played by Chukwudi Iwuji, who was a main star in the Peacemaker TV series as well.
Yes.
Of course, again, we have Chris Pratt playing Peter Quill, Star-Lord. Cosmo the dog, of course, played by Maria Bakalova, who we saw in the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. Will Poulter coming in and making his MCU debut as Adam Warlock.
Excellent.
Nathan Fillion getting a bigger role in this movie, this time playing the character Master Karja. Nathan Fillion has had guest roles in each of the movies because he's worked very well with James Gunn over the years. So he has had little guest moments in previous ones, but this is the first time you've really seen him on screen. So great to have him in here. Of course, Vin Diesel, I am Groot, back once again. And he gets an additional line in this movie as well.
He does, yes.
Yeah.
I guess he's been listening and learning some new words.
Well, we'll talk about that later on when we get to that final moment of the movie. But of course, we will call out one cameo that's in the movie, because James Gunn said he would never make a Guardians movie without this actor. Michael Rooker does get his moment as Yondu once again.
Yes.
In a very cool little moment. So, good stuff. Those are the details for the movie. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
Sure. At their new headquarters on Nowhere, the Guardians of the Galaxy are attacked by Adam Warlock, a sovereign warrior created by their High Priestess Aisha. After Adam overpowers them and seriously wounds Rocket, he is stabbed by Nebula and forced to flee. The Guardians are unable to tend to Rocket's wounds due to a kill switch made by the company OrgoCorp, embedded within him. To save their friend, the Guardians travel to OrgoCorp's headquarters to find the override code. As Rocket lies unconscious, he recalls his past. As a baby raccoon, he was experimented on by the High Evolutionary, a scientist who sought to enhance animal life forms into anthropomorphic species to create a perfect counter-Earth. Rocket befriends the other test subjects, an otter called Lila, the walrus Teefs, and the rabbit named Floor. Of all these test subjects, the High Evolutionary was most impressed by Rocket's intelligence, but furious when it exceeded his own. Perfecting the anthropomorphization process, with Rocket's advice, he orders Rocket's brain to be extracted and his friends incinerated. Rocket, realizing he and his friends were not part of the High Evolutionary's perfect world, frees himself and his friends. But Lila, Teefs, and Floor are killed in the escape by the High Evolutionary. Rocket, enraged, mauls the High Evolutionary and shoots his guards as he makes his solitary escape in a spaceship. Back in the present, the alternate version of Gamora, who has joined the Ravagers, helps the Guardians infiltrate OrgoCorp, which is owned by the High Evolutionary. They retrieve Rocket's file, but discover that the code has been removed. The group speculates that Theel, one of the High Evolutionary's recorders, has it, so they depart for Counter-Earth. They are followed by Aisha and Adam Warlock, who are ordered by their creator to retrieve Rocket for his brain. Upon arriving on Counter-Earth, the team is helped by the residents in tracing Theel to the High Evolutionary's ship. Drax and Mantis remain with Gamora and Rocket as Peter, Quill, Groot and Nebula travel to the ship. Nebula is forced to wait outside by guards as Quill and Groot board. Drax and Mantis chase after Quill's group. The High Evolutionary initiates the destruction and planned recreation of Counter-Earth after being disappointed with his latest version of perfection, and kills all life on the planet, including the Sovereign's High Priestess Aisha. As his ship enters orbit, Quill and Groot leap off with Theel, retrieving the code from him. Gamora arrives with their ship to rescue them, while Nebula, Mantis and Drax have boarded the ship to rescue the now absent Quill and Groot. As Quill's group attempts to access the code, Rocket flatlines and has a near-death experience, where he sees Lila, Teefs and Floor. Lila tells him that his time has not yet come, as Quill uses the code to disable the kill switch and save Rocket's life. Back on the ship, Nebula, Mantis and Drax come across hundreds of imprisoned humanoid children who are there captured to become part of the High Evolutionary's new perfected Counter-Earth. Meanwhile, Quill's group sets out to rescue the three, who are placed in a chamber with monstrous obelisks. Mantis befriends the obelisks, allowing the group to escape and reunite with Quill's group, together overpowering the High Evolutionary's army. Kraglin and Cosmo arrive on Nowhere, and Cosmo creates a telekinetic tunnel connecting Nowhere to the High Evolutionary's ship to free the captured children. Rocket discovers imprisoned animals on the ship as well, before being attacked by the High Evolutionary. The rest of the Guardians help subdue him, leaving him to perish on his ship. The Guardians rescue the animals and lead them aboard Nowhere. Quill nearly dies trying to cross over, but is saved by Adam Warlock, who has become an ally after being saved by Groot. In the aftermath, Quill leaves the Guardians, bestowing the captaincy to Rocket before leaving for Earth to reunite with his grandfather, Jason. Mantis embarks on a new journey of self-discovery with the Obelisks. Gamora reunites with the Ravagers, and Nebula and Drax remain on Nowhere to raise the rescued children. In a mid-credit scene, the new Guardians, consisting of Rocket, a fully grown Groot, Cosmo, Kraglin, Adam, Phyla-Vell, one of the rescued children, and Adam's pet Blurp take on a new mission. In a post-credit scene, Quill eats breakfast with his grandfather Jason. The legendary Star-Lord will return.
Eating cereal. Yes.
Exactly.
And
mowing
other people's lawns. Yes. We will, again, talk about all of these as we go through our spoiler-filled discussion. Great synopsis there, John.
Why, thank you. Although I wish the bad guy of this piece wasn't called the High Evolutionary.
Yeah, it'd be nice if his name was Fred or something, so you could just say that.
Or High Ev.
Eve. Just call it
Eve. Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff. Let's get into our top 5 points of discussion. What we normally do is pick out some major points, major moments from the movie and discuss them and our thoughts on them. Yeah? I think we're going to start on Nowhere, where the movie begins, and the attack of Adam Warlock. But the opening of the movie, really a somber kind of opening for the movie, given that we had 2 movies in a row that started off with big action sequences and lots of fun, excitement from the Guardians. Here we have
Radiohead.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Radiohead.
Who I love,
Creep.
but
yeah.
certainly, yes, it was fairly downbeat. None of the rip-roaring tunes like you would associate with Guardians of the Galaxy, although we do get to see that we're moving into the era of sort of late 90s, 2000s. Yeah. In terms of music as well.
Yes, that's because they've moved from Peter Quill's mom's tapes from the 70s and moved on to a zune that Kraglin found from in volume 2. So a zune filled with music all the way up to the 2000s. So a little bit more contemporary, but still 25 years old.
Well, that's true.
But I like the choice here again of Creep, the acoustic version of it, which I think was a B-side to Fight Plastic Trees back in the mid-90s, if I remember my Radiohead correctly. So it has been around for a very long time. It is still a 90s tune, but interestingly, they didn't even choose the big electronic version of Creep, which is a big, powerful tune. They chose Tom York's acoustic version. So a very somber start to this movie, all about Rocket and why
absolutely.
he is the person he is.
And it is Rocket who is listening to it. I love the fact that he's singing along to it as well, that there's that aspect. And of course here we see Peter Quill drunk, really non-compos mentis, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, fairly somber.
Yeah.
Except Peter Quill, who certainly wasn't sober.
No, he wasn't.
But then we have this flash of an attack as Adam Warlock comes steaming in, going straight for Rocket.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and fighting his way through the rest of the Guardians on his way to Rocket as well. He had a great moment versus Drax. He has a great moment versus Gamora.
I love how Gamora sort of reconfigures herself after being sort of beaten out of shape by Adam Warlock. Really, love that visual.
Absolutely, yeah, really, really cool how that's seen on screen. But here's our introduction to Will Poulter. This character's been talked about for a very long time. This was in the post-credit scene from Guardians Volume 2, the introduction of Adam Warlock and Will Poulter, an actor that we both really like.
Yeah.
Been watching his career right back from when he was in Son of Rambo.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed him since then. And here he is in the MCU playing what we probably thought was going to be the big villain of the movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A big villain of the movie. And certainly, I don't know anything about Adam Warlock, even as a comic reader. I just really, maybe there's been a few comics where he's crossed over into them.
Right.
But ultimately, I really don't know a huge amount about Adam Warlock, but I've always taken him as quite a serious character. You know, he is pretty much indestructible. Warlock tends to add this notion of being a strategic fighter and so on. Certainly for the Sovereign, that's his role as this kind of vanguard in battle. And you certainly get that sense as well here as he attacks nowhere in order to claim Groot.
Yeah.
But I kind of was surprised then that as the film unfolded, he was almost a bit of a bumbling sort of nonplussed type of person. Now, I actually really loved this. I really think it speaks to probably James Gunn's sensibility of taking such a powerful character and actually making him a little bit stupid.
Yeah.
And really kind of just certainly has no agency. He's just really being ordered around and controlled by the High Priestess to begin with, but also on the grander scale of things and in relation to this attack by the High Evolutionary who created the Sovereign.
Exactly.
So it was,
and as we learn, the Sovereign is saying that he created them as beautiful idiots, basically. They're gorgeous, amazing looking people, but they're not very smart. And then they created Adam Warlock, took him out too early. They took him out much earlier on, so he is not fully developed. So that's why he's a little bit behind the times, doesn't have much knowledge of the world, but then directed this weapon to go and get Rocket. So he's not making all the right decisions, and he's kind of a newbie in this galaxy or in this world as well. So,
well, absolutely. I mean, I do love when they have captured one of the Ravagers in order for them to try and find Rocket, because they feel that will, after effectively the failure of Adam Warlock to capture Rocket here because of Nebula's intervention, kind of he heads off licking his wounds, goes, actually that hurt.
Yeah.
The big
swords,
blade from Nebula.
Yeah.
but they're now kind of scrambling the Sovereign because the High Evolutionary will be really annoyed with them. And I kind of just like that when they capture one of the Ravagers and they're going to try and find out where they are, and in order to get Rocket and get back into the good books of the High Evolutionary. I just love the fact that it says, make him talk, and he just incinerates the Ravager, and only for the grace of God or the High Evolutionary, there is the comms unit that they know, they hear the Gamora trying to get rescued off the Guardian ship. But I just love the fact that he's so powerful. Maybe he doesn't have full control of it, but he just, on the order of to try and sort of loosen him up to show them
we mean business.
He effectively just incinerates this Ravager, who is, a hilarious pile of bones, with charred clothes still on. So
absolutely,
I actually really, just coming back to Adam Warlock, I loved how this played out with Adam Warlock. I mean, it took me a while just to get over the fact that he wasn't what I was expecting in any way, but I actually really like the arc, and I'm really pleased that he is in the Guardians.
Do interestingly, it's not what I expected from the character of Adam Warlock, but it is kind of what I expect from the actor Will Poulter.
Well, absolutely.
There were times when I'm not saying he doesn't have range, but I've seen him in lots of things now, and this is the kind of character he plays, a kind of a lovable idiot sometimes. He's been in the Meet the Millers. He was in the remake of National Lampoon's Vacation as well. So he's that kind of guy that kind of falls through a little bit, makes lots of mistakes, and that's not what I was expecting in Adam Warlock. But it works very well for Will Poulter.
It does. I mean, Will Poulter does have range. I mean, in the sense, like, he did Detroit, which was really good.
That was very good.
And loved him in that because it was so different, but this is certainly in his wheelhouse, and he's very, very good at it. And you're right, it is that lovable character that you might not actually love too much, but in the end kind of, gets you back on side. And I think that's ultimately what happened here to the arc of this character. Certainly with Groot saving him, which I thought was a really, really good touch.
It was. Everybody deserves a second chance.
Exactly. I really enjoyed. Again, it's like with most of the Guardians of the Galaxy for me, the whole sentiment behind these movies, I just really, really enjoy, and that is part of it for me.
Absolutely, and this moment really sets up the whole movie. And in a way, this movie feels a little bit smaller than the previous movies. This is a movie about the Guardians saving one of their own. Rocket is on his back here. He's about to die because there's a kill switch inside him, which means they can't help him. They can't cure him and fix the damage that's been done by Adam Warlock. So they're now on a mission to save him, rather than it being a mission of saving the galaxy. It's a mission of saving themselves.
But inadvertently, they also saved the galaxy from a pretty horrendous antagonist here in the High Evolutionary. But I think, to your point, we should go on to our point number 2, which is Rocket and Friends here. And I guess the memories that are flooding back to Rocket as he lies in this catch-22 position of dying from the wound that Adam Warlock has given him, but also there being no way of treating it or helping him recover, because there is this proprietary kill switch in order to kill Rocket if he's tampered with, because ultimately he is the High Evolutionary's intellectual property. And so this sequence of going back in time to how Rocket came to be was, I think, it was really good for the character. Also hugely, it's like the island of Dr. Moreau. Fairly creepy, almost felt Toy Story-like.
I was thinking,
as well.
Sid's house in Toy Story, where they put all the different elements of toys together. Because that's what James Gunn is doing really well in this movie, is taking things, turning them grotesque and still making you care about them. It's something that he does quite well in a lot of his movies. That's kind of his sensibility. He comes from a horror background. He loves that type of thing. So he's incorporated it really well into this movie. Right back from the first Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, the story of Rocket has always been there in the background. It always felt like we need to know that story. We need to know how Rocket became the person he is, why he hates other people, why he has such a reaction to people calling him a raccoon, not a trash panda, a raccoon, right the way back from the first one, why he steals people's arms and limbs. Some of this is played out quite well in this backstory we get, but it goes back to the cutest moment. It goes back to him as a baby raccoon in a whole cage full of other raccoons picked out by the High Evolutionary to do his experiments on him. And the big problem for the High Evolutionary here is that he does his work on him, he experiments on him, and he's created a being even more intelligent than him. This being that learns quicker than the High Evolutionary can and can solve problems quicker than the High Evolutionary can. But during the story, we get to meet the other characters around him, his first family, let's say, with the other creatures that are experimented on. And it's a lovely moment, but I think knowing where Rocket is and that he is a loner and that he's on his own, I think the first moment I saw these really cute creatures, I was going, uh-oh, poor kids in the audience here. They're going to learn some lessons about death by the end of this movie.
Well, absolutely. And, well, death, disfigurement, and all of that. But, to your point, it's absolutely the imperfect here in Rocket, in Lila, Teeth, and Floor, are much more human or much more relatable. You care for them. I mean, it's hugely emotional, all of this.
Yep.
But there's this overriding element of the grotesque about it because of the mechanical arms or the walrus on wheels or the rabbit effectively on spider mechanical legs. It's taken the cuteness, distorted it, but actually there's a level of empathy because of the struggle and the horror that they're having to go through and how they, like, in particular Lila, but also Teeth and Floor, how they kind of maintain their integrity around the horrors that are happening and are being done to them by the High Evolutionary. And so, ironically, the most humanoid person, the least grotesque, is internally the most grotesque. It's just barbaric, is just playing with aesthetics ultimately. As much as him being sort of drawn to the intelligence of Rocket, it's like they don't look right or they can't do these functions, but these functions are kind of basic functions that they do. And
but he's working with them to create the stepping stones to
it's
a
the
perfect
experimentation.
But he's trying to create this perfect world.
It's animal testing.
And the point is, even though they believe they could be going to their version of Valhalla, this counter Earth that he's creating, he was never intending to do that. These were just stepping stones to develop what he wanted to put on counter Earth. It's an incredibly brutal moment when Rocket escapes after using his knowledge to create the key card to get them out of the cage. With all the pieces that he's been gathering. I really like that we have a very Rocket moment when he puts together all of the pieces to create the key card to get them out of the cage. That feels like the kind of stuff that he's made over the years in the previous movies, all the great weapons that he's created, all the great plans that he's created. It really it calls back to all of those.
And we see really cool moment. And we see Nebula's new arm as well, which is a Rocket invention.
Do you think he made that out of the Winter Soldier's arm that she stole from him and gave to him as a Christmas present?
Maybe.
maybe. But it turns into an incredibly brutal moment when he releases Lila and Teefs from the other cell, and Lila is killed by the High Evolutionary. She's murdered right in front of him. And then his guards come in and kill the other two, kill Teefs and Floor as well. So it's a really horrible moment when you think he's using all of his abilities to get them to escape. He's done this countless times with the rest of the Guardians. Here he has his own troop, his own little family, and they're all killed in front of him. And that brutality begets more brutality as he rips off the face of the High Evolutionary, the person that's trying to attain pure perfection here. We find out at the end of the movie that his own face has been ripped off, effectively. Another pretty gruesome looking scene. I know this is a PG-13 movie. There are points where it does, I think, stray into the, oh no, I brought my kids along to this. I probably should have been a bit more prepared. I don't have any kids, so it's okay for me. But I could feel a little tension in the audience with some of the younger kids that were there. I could feel some of the parents kind of going, what have we done here? Yeah. But you know, we remember moments like Indiana Jones back in the 80s absolutely. Where we saw melting faces, you know.
This is perfect children's movie from my point of view, because it really has a message, and adults as well, you know, it's like Toy Story. It covers and crosses all that whole spectrum. Yeah. And you're right. There are some moments where you just think, oh, well, will this be okay for children? You know, a lot of the time, as you say, we're talking like 7 years since the release of all of these. So if, you know, it's also kids growing up with these movies. Absolutely. So they could be 17 if they were 10 back when they watched the first one. Yeah. So, you know, it is a bit difficult to watch sometimes, but I think that's what good movies do. Like you say, with Indiana Jones, you know, the high, even Goonies, you know, a high element of gore around them.
Can be. Absolutely. Absolutely. And they shouldn't avoid that.
No. But I also don't think it's solely a children's movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. And never really has been, I think. Yeah. It's mainly because we're seeing cute animals that are disfigured. Yeah. But we've only seen them disfigured. You know, it was only Rocket initially being picked out as a very young raccoon. And I have to say, the animation of these animals or the CGI is really, really good. Same with Cosmo. And they are absolutely spot on as far as I can tell.
Yeah. And Cosmo is a very good boy.
Yes. She is.
Yes, she is. Yes. I think that's enough on Rocket and Friends. Anything else you want to add to that as a point?
Well, just the scene where Rocket is dying, and is beginning to sort of weaken and, you know, go into flatline, and you have, you know, the moment of the white other world, and I'm really glad that you see Lila, Teefs, and Floor coming back here. Yeah. That moment, as Rocket is fading. And I just, again, it's just a nice sentiment. You know, it's not your time, as then the code to disable the kill switch is finally getting processed in order for them to be able to use the med packs to save him. Yeah. So absolutely. That was a really nice moment, you know? Yeah. And even Lila's sentiment of, well, we are in our perfect world. We're in our world with blue sky, and it's always blue, and we'll wait for you. So I kind of really like that.
Lovely moment. Yeah, absolutely. There is a version of heaven, I guess, that's appearing in the MCU there.
I guess so. Yeah. Well, it felt very much a bit like with...
if you say Harry Potter, that's exactly what's on my mind.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Harry Potter meeting Dumbledore, yeah. Excellent.
So, really, you know, again... really good backstory. You know, you can see the essence of Rocket there, but also the brutality as to why he hasn't spoken about it. Yeah. You know, because of the loss, the experimentation, and the brutality of the High Evolutionary.
Yeah, absolutely. I also just do want to call out, I do love how they all get their names. I think that's really good. Like Lila chooses her name because she likes the name. Teefs says, well, my teeth are very big, so that's my most prominent feature. Floor takes her name because she's sitting on the floor, and Rocket takes his name because he wants to explore the galaxy with his friends and sees a rocket go by. So we do get a little moment of acknowledgement that he takes his name from that. And as we see later on in the movie, for this entire time that we've spent with Rocket Raccoon, when people call him a raccoon, he gets really angry at it. But when he finds out that is actually the species that he was taken from when he sees that cage and sees the origin as Earth and Raccoon written on it. He takes on his full title finally as Rocket Raccoon in this movie. So that was really nice to have that kind of close out as we get to the end of as we get to the end of the story for Rocket. Great stuff. Let's move on to our third point, which is the Guardians teaming up with the Ravagers, but more importantly here, Gamora and Peter meeting back up again.
Yes. Yeah. Awkward.
Just a bit. Yeah. This is a different Gamora. If I like the kind of line that we have, from her where she says, you know, I had only just left Thanos. So this is the Gamora that had literally turned on Thanos and then walked away into the galaxy, at the end of Avengers Endgame. So, no real connection with anybody in this group here other than her sister. And again, would have known a very different version of Nebula. So doesn't know anything about the Guardians, doesn't really understand why she would have fallen for somebody like Peter, at all. And the more he tries to impress her, the less she wants anything to do with him. He's trying to get her back, but it's not really her. I kind of like how this story plays out throughout the movie itself as well, because we have her being so reluctant to try and become anything like the Gamora that everybody knows within the Guardians. Gamora being one of the leaders of the Guardians, really back from the first movie. So, someone that they all loved and someone that they all respected around, and she's fighting back against that perception of her because that's not her. She never had that time to grow from when she left Thanos and moved into where she is now. So, it's a really interesting story to explore, and a really great dynamic, between the two of them as main characters in this movie.
Yeah, it was actually, and I thought it was dealt with really well, because I was thinking, oh, they're going to somehow get back together, but I like how it ultimately becomes about a mutual respect and appreciation of one another. Yeah. As Gamora is effectively forced against her will to go on this journey to save Rocket. Yeah. But she, you know, as she's there, she sees why they're doing it and begins to understand why they're doing it, and ultimately helps them in the final big battle. But nonetheless, it ends off with her going back to her group, which is the Ravagers. Yeah. And effectively saying, you know, Peter, I understand you now. Yeah. We're never going to be kind of what you thought we were going to be in terms of lovers, but, you know, I get you, kind of thing.
Yeah, I bet we were fun. And I love that line. It's a really good emotional beat to leave that story on. I don't imagine that we're going to have Gamora back in a future Guardians movie. I can't imagine that we're going to see this group of Guardians back at all in the future. So if we're going to cap off the Peter, Quill and Gamora story, I think that was a great way to leave it, where she does understand the group and does understand Groot by the end of the movie.
Yeah, I really like that gag through here, for sure.
Stop telling me your name.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, interesting, James Gunn has said that the scripts that he produces, he will have the lines that Groot says in I Am Groot for people who don't understand Groot, and we'll have the real lines in the script for the people that do understand Groot. I think that's really interesting. So Zoe Saldana will have received scripts that will only have I Am Groot written in there for her scenes with him, which I just think is a really interesting touch, to do it that way, so they can all play it that they don't understand him or do understand him. So,
yeah. No, I mean, it was really, I really like that gag. Yeah. I must say, I loved Drax and Mantis together. I loved their interplay, and I loved as well with Nebula. I mean, there was a really nice sense with these three, because in a sense, certainly with Mantis, Nebula has always felt like an outsider, whilst Mantis is Peter Quill's sister. Yeah. It's through a very, you know, convoluted way. It's almost like a stepsister, I would say.
Half-sister.
Or half-sister. Yeah. And, you know, came in volume 2. So it's not that they've outsiders, Nebula more, but just kind of, they're apart from the others, because Drax is so quirky in terms of, and has no social skills, so he is, in a sense, an outsider of that group, even though he's integral to the group. There's Mantis, and Nebula, who has actually been fighting the group for most of the volumes of these films. Yeah. But I liked how this plays, where Nebula in the end says, I do understand, you, Drax, right at the end. You're not a destroyer, you're a father.
Yeah.
And this is after they're both effectively calling him stupid all the way through. I mean, to the point where Mantis is like, forget, as you can see that he's taking it to heart, It really
hurts him that she thinks that he's stupid. And that's the thing, when Nebula realizes that his benefit is that he was a father until he lost his children and then became the destroyer. And now he's able to go back to much more of his fatherly nature when he's around the kids. She realizes his purpose. She realizes that his purpose should not be Drax the destroyer. It should be Drax the dad.
Yeah, as she says, I understand you now.
Yeah. But you're right. I must say that the story of Nebula throughout this series has been fantastic. If you look back on where she was at the beginning, the antagonist that she was, where she came from, the relationship with Thanos and with Gamora, and now where she is at the end of these movies, where she's developed to as being a proper leader. She's not as serious anymore. She is, she has found her place, I'd say, by the end of these. And it's so interesting when you think we knew her as Karen Gillan from Doctor Who for the seasons that she was on there, and she was such a lovable character on there, and played this role of Nebula to perfection, this vindictive sometimes and very violent character, but an abused character. There's a great moment when we see the treatment of Rocket and how he came to creation, and you see the reaction from Nebula where she realizes how closely their lives have
Absolutely.
mirrored.
And that's why actually Nebula and Rocket have that closer relationship with, that initial attack by Adam Warlock. It's Nebula who is racing to protect him is the first one to go after him. Adam Warlock. And yet there is that commonality of having been abused and experimented on and tested on. So it was really, really good. And I think as well, it's, with Drax, just some really good moments here with that sensibility, which I just find really funny. I mean, I think we've seen some of them in the trailers about, we're going to kill them all. And it's like, no. Yeah. Maybe just a few. Or what about one really stupid one?
One sad one that nobody likes.
Exactly. Just where is like, Quill, would you like a Zargnut? And he's like, no, I'm fine. And Mantis is, well, can I have one? I don't have any. Yeah. As he then puts one in his mouth. I mean, it's it's really, I just love these social dynamics of kind of, I mean, it does feel of nerdy, geeky friends that would do that kind of thing, it's almost like playing up to it, really. But,
well, that's the big difference, isn't it, between the Guardians and the Avengers. The Guardians are a group of misfits who are almost forced together to save the galaxy and find their family amongst them. The Avengers are a group of superpower people who need to protect the world. It's a very different type of grouping. So
absolutely,
that group of misfits that become a found family is what's been central to this group since the beginning.
Yeah. So I really like those through lines with those three characters as well. And I think, as you say, for Nebula, it also stretches right back to Volume 1. Yeah. As much. Well, so same with Drax. I mean, he does understand Jib or Jub.
Yes, he does.
So again, with Mantis, she's like, you understand them? He says, yes, they're children. Yeah. And he starts sort of playing with them and doing the crazy funky dance as well.
The monkey noises. Yeah. I guess monkeys on his home planet are different to monkeys on Earth. But still.
Absolutely.
A fun moment.
But let us move on to point number 4, saving Rocket.
We took a little break to take out our podcat Charlie, who you may have heard entering the background there, as he often does while we're recording our podcast. But yes, let's get on to point number 4, saving Rocket, which is really the journey of the Guardians throughout this movie. They go through many different places in their quest to save Rocket. First off, going to the Orgoscope.
Yes.
Yeah, the planet made of organic material, which looks absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, it does.
Meeting Nathan Fillion and his guards, who all have organic suits that they're covered in, which again, probably pretty disgusting to get in and out of at the start and end of your shift every day.
I would say so.
Yeah. But again, we do, and it's kind of call back to
everything's kind of squidgy.
Everything's very squidgy and not very nice. But to kind of call back to the discussion about Gamora and Peter, we also see Peter trying to show his skills with women to Gamora to see if that might get her to attract him as he tries to infiltrate the orgoscope, using his wily ways and charms. I thought that was a really fun scene, a really good moment for Peter to show off, and to see at the end that he's not as stupid as we think he is. He tells her that he wants to just plead his case to the security guards in this facility so that he can get Rocket's files and maybe find this way of releasing the kill switch. And it turns out actually he just wants access to the central system. So he's not as stupid as we think.
Absolutely.
He is. It plays on that a bit. So
yeah, it was a good little part of this movie as well, just because it kind of sets up with Gamora and Peter Quill, as you say, and kind of tries to deal with that. You have some good fun moments here, but ultimately it sends them on the way to try and find Theel, who has actually taken that code, the kill switch code.
And you do see him in the background.
Yes.
You see him kind of giving a look to Peter Quill in there. Interesting to see Nico Santos in this movie, recognizable for us for our lockdown watching of 6 seasons of Superstore, as a main character in there. So great to see him in the MCU here as well. But that leads them on the path then, because the file has been emptied of this code, that leads them on the path to going to Counter Earth. So we get to see this other version of Earth that the High Evolutionary has created.
It's apparently this perfect world where they're starting to deal meth.
The octopus dealing meth to the other
which
creatures.
I kind of loved was, Peter Quill sort of when he's in the ship of the High Evolutionary. I keep wanting to call it the High Executioner, but the High Evolutionary, and he says, "Well, it's so perfect. You've got people, your perfect people are dealing meth on the streets," of which is like, right, moving on. It's like kill switch for the planet. And he's got his backup already. There was an intention to do this, but the fact that it's been noticed by an outsider means it just hastens this kill switch of Counter Earth. But they do manage to escape from this as it is blasting off from Counter Earth. But I love the fact that Nebula, Drax, and Mantis have gotten on to try and save them as they jump off.
That was good.
I liked how, and then they have to go after the ship in order to save Nebula, Drax, and Mantis.
You don't you even see them falling out of or jumping out of the ship past them.
Exactly.
I thought that was really good. One thing about Counter Earth that I thought was a bit weird is this is where they've chosen to put the first F-bomb of the MCU. There have been Marvel movies in the past, the ones produced by Sony, the X-Men movies particularly have all had one F word in them, but there's never been one in the MCU before. And they chose it in the scene where Nebula's trying to get into the car and having trouble getting in. And, Peter Quill says, "Get in the effing car." And I thought that was a really weird moment to do it. If you're going to have the ability to use just one in a movie, they usually do it as a really big moment. I thought it was going to be Rocket saying, "I'm in the Guardians of the effing Galaxy." I thought that was going to be a moment that you'd hear it potentially, not Peter Quill in a car saying it. So I thought that was just a bit of an odd choice. People did go into the movie knowing that there was going to be an F-bomb in here. So I thought that was a bit weird. Just wanted to mention it. But we mentioned James Gunn's sensibility of creating cute creatures and then killing them off. This entire planet full of cute animals that we are introduced to, and you see them all die in the background. They're all wiped out by High Evolutionary because this is his plan. He will wipe out and kill until he attains perfection. So see, again, something that you see on screen, and you see all these characters. Nobody escapes. Nobody hops aboard the Guardian's ship and is taken away to safety. All those characters that you meet on the planet and help them out in their plan to save Rocket, they're all gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, interestingly, it is that in going to save Mantis, Drax, and Nebula, Rocket is now there to save them.
Yes.
Even though they think they're there to save Rocket. And so I like how this plays out, because I thought that Rocket would get sort of brought back to the High Evolutionary. And so I like that, in a sense, it's almost back on his own terms as he confronts the High Evolutionary.
Yes,
and
it's not a trap, it's a face-off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think importantly as well that he says, I'm not going to kill you because I'm a guardian of the galaxy. However, you have all the rest of them jumping in to sort of knock him down, and he is consumed by his exploding ship as they make their escape.
Yeah.
But
I will say that battle worked really well.
It really did.
If you contrast it with the battle that we had with Adam Warlock, another very powerful character earlier on in the movie, the reason he's able to beat them is because he's taken them on one by one. And at the end here, we have all of the Guardians working together, using their own abilities together as a group to take out this really powerful creator of this really powerful villain. So I thought that worked really, really well, seeing all of them use their abilities together once again.
I have to say, though, as well, I think, in terms of the High Evolutionary, Chukwudi Iwuji, I thought was brilliant. You really wanted to test this character.
Yeah.
It's kind of pompous in his own self-importance.
Definitely.
And I just thought he was superb in creating someone just, so obscene and so awful. But with this veneer of, doing it for a grander purpose. Absolutely. But actually it ends up where you realize his purpose is almost meaningless, because Rocket's kind of lying to him as he says, I am a guardian of the galaxy, so I'm not going to finish you off. Is it, it's not that you were trying to obtain perfection, but it's you couldn't accept things as they are.
Absolutely.
And it was just really good. And I mean, it just encapsulated, it made the put down even more sort of cutting to the High Evolutionary with this disfigured face as well, from being mauled by Rocket as a younger Raccoon after all his friends had been killed. So I really I just thought it had huge meaning. It had much more impact for Rocket doing that. And I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, an excellent character. Really loved every time the High Evolutionary was on screen. I thought he really did play that real villainous role where he believes in what he's doing. He believes that what he's doing is right, no matter the cost. But the cost is everybody throughout the movie.
And the only reason he has a thought for Rocket is because Rocket saw the problem with his chamber to do the evolutionary process. Otherwise none of these test subjects mean anything to him. That's why he can blow up a planet. I mean,
but his resolution was going to be take the brain out of Rocket, obviously killing him and kill everybody else in the Group 89. That's what was going to happen. It wasn't that he was going to keep Rocket around. He was disgusted by the fact that this creature that he created and he developed was able to solve a problem that he couldn't solve, because he believed in himself that he was some form of perfection, or at least could create perfection. So, a really good, interesting villain in the movie. I really, really enjoyed him. Probably won't see him back given the explosion that was there, unfortunately. Yeah.
And of course, they also managed to free all the children as well as all the animals.
Yes.
I did like the moment as Cosmo is creating that bridge between nowhere and the ship. Just that one of the monkeys comes running out and goes straight into one of Nowhere's citizens' faces and starts scratching it because it's so panicked. Just those little touches I thought were really good.
Absolutely. And again, another power of a Guardian helping to save them, with Cosmo being able to create this bridge between the two ships. I thought that was really interesting, having Nowhere come down and having that being used as a ship. It's an entire planet, the former head of a Celestial, being used as this kind of transport ship. I thought that was quite cool. And we have the redemption of Adam Warlock. We mentioned it earlier on, but him being saved by Groot, in turn has him saving Peter Quill, who absolutely should have died in space.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It does echo something from, I think, the first movie when Gamora saved Peter Quill when he went out into space and started to freeze and she saved him. I remember at the time watching that scene and going, he's in space quite a long time here. Why isn't he dead?
Yeah.
This time it seemed like he was in space for another 3 or 4 minutes longer.
You
than
have
that.
it in volume 2 as well with Yondu as well.
Yeah. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But anyway, yes.
But you know, you have this scene. I think in the first one, I remember him being out and him putting his mask over.
Yeah.
So I was suddenly like surprised that didn't happen here.
Yeah.
I must say I did miss that aesthetic of Star-Lord. But I think...
And it covers Chris Pratt's face as well, so yeah.
But I have to say, this whole scene, initially I was like, oh my goodness, he's going to die. He is going to die here. And I thought he had died because his face bloats.
Mm-hmm.
But weirdly, I was also trying not to laugh because it was so grotesque what they had done. I was like... That's so weird that they would do that because, like, with Yondu, his face stayed the same.
Yeah.
It just you got the ice crystals, and I was like, "What are the? Is this how disfigured they can make Chris Pratt look? You know, in the final moments as he dies." I genuinely thought he was going to die. And as soon as Adam Warlock saves him, and you have that moment where, still kind of semi bloated, he's like, you know, thanking Adam Warlock. I just couldn't stop laughing.
Cool? Yeah.
I found it actually really darkly hilarious all the way through. I mean, to the point where I think once I started laughing at it, I think in the cinema, the people in the row behind me started laughing as well. It was like this release of tension because even though because you thought he was dying and was in fact dead, you're like, I can't really laugh here at what they've just done with the bloating. And then that he survives it, you're like, oh, I can finally laugh at how like ridiculous he looked there. And how he is trying to speak through the bloated face that's sort of starting to subside. I was just like, I don't know whether that was intended for that to happen, but I must say I just really did find this sort of faux death scene really, really hilarious.
Yeah, James Gunn has a way of making you laugh at things you're not expecting to laugh at, so I think it was intended. I think he knows exactly what he was doing with that scene. One other redemption that happens, I suppose, or arc that completes, let's say, in this scene, in the saving of Rocket Seed, is that we have Kraglin saving Nowhere. As they're attacked by the minions of the High Evolutionary, he finally learns how to whistle properly and control and guide the weapon that was gifted to him by Yondu after his death in Volume 2. So this is where we get the Yondu cameo. We have the return of Yondu telling Kraglin to go with his heart, not with his mind. He's not trying to control it. He needs to feel it and needs to step up effectively. So finally we have Kraglin getting almost the superpower to be able to control the weapon of Yondu and take out so many beasts on the planet Nowhere. So,
it was a nice little touch having Yondu there for sure.
Absolutely. And great for Kraglin.
Yes.
Yeah, Kraglin's been a character right back from the first movie that's always been in the background and has been building, I think, as we've been going through all of these years. It's played by James Gunn's brother, and he is on set. He plays Rocket, and I think he also plays Groot on set as well. Yeah. So great to have a moment for him in this movie as well.
Excellent stuff. Yeah. Let us go on to our fifth and final point.
Yes.
Dog days are over.
I think we have to name it after the song because the song is so important and the music is so important to the movie. We said about that opening scene with Creep. There's some great other musical moments, as there always are in James Gunn movies, but here we have the group split. We have this final moment where they're all leaving. You mentioned, of course, Gamora going off and returning to the Ravagers and her being welcomed home as a member of the family, despite what Quill had said to her. Quill had said, Gamora, you don't belong with them, you belong with us. We're your family. But she goes back to them, and we realize she does have her own family with the Ravagers. They welcome her back with open arms, including Sylvester Stallone, who we didn't talk about at all. Sylvester Stallone returning here to the role he was in Volume 2. He's now the leader of the Ravagers, but has his moment in this movie here as well. I did feel, though, he was being given a lot of lines that Sylvester Stallone wouldn't traditionally be given. He was given a lot of scientific exposition.
Yeah.
And I felt there may have been a lot of work done in
post-production
for him to re-record the lines, because I felt it wasn't matching what he was saying exactly. But they were very difficult lines. I don't think I'd be able to say them either. So no criticism of him there. But I did feel he may have had to do a lot of work after the filming to do that. But in that, we see Mantis saying finally that she's always been led by other people. She was led by Ego, and whatever he wanted to do, that's how she lived her life up until she met the Guardians. Yeah. Now she's in the Guardians and she's doing what the Guardians wanted to do, but now she's going to go off and find her own path, find what her purpose in the universe and the galaxy is. So she's the first to leave. Then Quill says he wants to return to Earth. So an interesting moment, because you're absolutely right. You're kind of going, well, he was stolen from Earth as a child, as a 12-year-old, stolen away from Earth, has spent all the time traveling around the galaxy, and never returned to find out what happened to his family.
And it's something that does play through the movie here as well.
Mm-hmm.
That notion of, well, do you not want to find out, what's happened to the people that you've left behind?
Mm-hmm.
It's slightly mirroring what happens with Rocket in terms of, his past and so on. Yeah. And this kind of is being brought up, do you not want to also know how what you left behind in the past and how they have changed.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We also, as I say, my favorite was Drax becoming a dad to all the rescued children, the Jib-Jibs or the Jub-Jubs.
Yeah.
I really thought
we need to watch the movie again and definitely find out whether it's Jib-Jibs, I'm sure.
Or Jub-Jub.
Or Jub-Jub.
I think it may have been Jub-Jub.
Okay.
But yeah. Fellow Defenders, we watched it once last night, late. So yes, not everything is fully clear, I guess. But also as well, I like the fact that Nebula is there to, rebuild, repair Nowhere, as the home for the refugees, from the High Evolutionary ship.
Absolutely. And it does feel like she's stepping up into that leadership role now, right? Because you're almost looking at her going, she's had those moments where she's been guiding the rest of the Guardians to form their group and, telling Peter off when he's doing the wrong thing and telling other people off. And you feel like she could have also stepped up to become the new captain of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but she is taking this leadership role to set up Nowhere, and the captaincy, of course, passes to Rocket because that's where he belongs. He is the new leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy, with, of course, Groot forever at his side. So that is where we leave them. The group that we've been following in the Guardians has now split, but we do have two major members left, of course, with Groot and Rocket.
Yes,
there.
Luckily, voice actors only need to be involved here.
Well, yes,
potentially. Yeah, we also have Kraglin there, as well, Phyla Vel, which is one of the rescued children, as well as Cosmo, being in the New Guardians, and of course, Adam Warlock and his pet as well.
Yes. Blurp. I do like
so, I really like seeing them sort of waiting to save a group of a population, a village from a horde of, I guess, pretty nasty creatures that were charging their way.
Yeah, absolutely. An interesting one is Phyla Vel, the child, who was one of the rescued children. There's a connection there with Captain Marvel. The comic book Captain Marvel, she is the daughter of the original Captain Marvel, not Carol Danvers. That was her father, was the original Captain Marvel. She eventually does become Captain Marvel as well, or a Captain Marvel in the comics. And if you saw her powers, she has got light powers coming out of her hands, similar to Carol Danvers. So interesting to see her in there. Obviously a much younger character there, so I don't think she'll be taken over from Carol Danvers anytime soon, but interesting to see her as a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. She has been a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy in the comic books as well. So
absolutely.
So another formation of the group in here.
And of course, as we said, we, in the final post-credit scene, we do see Quill back on Earth, at his grandfather's.
Do you know, I will say, and I've probably said it on the podcast for those of you who've listened to us over the last 9 years, I've probably said it a couple of times before, reunions of family members always get me. I thought going into this movie, we were going to lose members of the Guardians of the Galaxy, that people of the major characters were going to die, ones that we spent years with. So I was kind of preparing myself for a moment of emotion at the loss of someone, particularly someone like Rocket, who I love as a character. But it was the moment that Peter Quill reunited with his grandfather that actually was the one that I had a bit of tears in my eyes. I thought it was a beautifully put together scene where you realize that his grandfather never knew what happened to Peter after that night. You know, he may have just thought he ran away and disappeared. You know, he never knew what happened to him. So, really liked that. But that post-credit scene, where we have him eating cereal for breakfast, moaning about having to mow the neighbor's lawn when there's a perfectly good 40-year-old son that could get off and come out and mow the lawn. It's a good joke. I think personally, and it's an opinion. Let's see what John thinks. But I think that closing sting of the legendary Star-Lord will return is absolutely a joke, because this is now Peter's life. Peter's life is moaning about mowing lawns, eating cereal with his granddad, who's reading the paper in the morning. That's not the legendary Star-Lord going off on a new adventure. I think it's James Gunn joke. James Gunn, of course, leaving Marvel. He will not be doing Guardians of the Galaxy 4 if there ever is one. So the joke is, this is who you could be following in the future, is Star-Lord sitting at home and occasionally doing chores for the neighbours. I think his adventures have ended. But of course it's open.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely a good amount of humour behind that. But also the smart thing about it is that it does actually leave it open.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Of all the characters, probably Peter Quill is the one I didn't want to get a spin-off movie. There's so many great characters in the Guardians. I'm not too excited about seeing Chris Pratt in another Marvel movie. He's had a lot of success and had a lot of other movies to follow up. So I'd love to see more Nebula. I'd love to see more Drax. I'd love to see what Mantis is doing on her journey of self-discovery. That'd be cool. And of course, the Guardians themselves, this brand new group of Guardians. Of course, I'd love to follow what happens with them in the future. But that's it. I think that's everything that we have in our main points for the episode. One note that I had, just to mention it, I thought was really interesting. That final scene with Peter's grandfather reading the newspaper did have a headline that said, "Alien abduction, Kevin Bacon tells all," which is a reference to the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special from last year. So I thought that was a bit of fun that they tied that in there. As far as I remember, the way the production worked was this whole movie was finished and then they filmed, edited and put out the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. So it's just a little nod to what happened in there, but it did film after the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 finished. Yeah. Even though it took place beforehand. That's how filming works, I guess.
Excellent stuff. Well, no notes from myself.
Grand. Okay. We're going to take a little other break. At least myself and John are going to take another break. We're going to send it over to hopefully, Chris in Chris's Corner to find out what Chris thought of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I think this has worked. Derek back again with you, and we are jumping over to Chris's Corner. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you. And it's not Chris, it is Floor 2.0.
Nice.
I am Floor.
We're really sorry for arranging our recording for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 on your anniversary, but happy anniversary, Chris.
Thank you. Somehow I did not or could not convince my wife that recording a podcast about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which we both really enjoyed, spoilers, on our anniversary was a good use of my time. So
well, you did convince her to go to the cinema the week of your anniversary, so that was pretty good.
That's true. I did get it. Exactly. She loves me and she understands my needs and wants.
Absolutely. That's why you're married to her, right?
Exactly.
Good stuff. And that's why she's married to you as well, of course. Anyway, enough of the lovey-dovey stuff. Overall, Chris, did you enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? Myself and John have obviously talked about our thoughts, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. I
absolutely I think it is the best Guardians of the Galaxy film. Mm-hmm. And just because it's built on the shoulders of the previous two. Okay. I would go in descending order 3, 1, 2 in terms of that order. Yeah. In terms of the content, the characters and things like that. Mm-hmm. I think it is one of the strongest MCU films in the last while.
Okay. Yep.
And again, it feels, I've seen a lot of takes on, it's the best thing in years. I'm like, Black Panther 2 was quite recently, people. Remember that?
Absolutely.
It's just very short-term memories.
Shang-Chi was an amazing movie very recently as well.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
So I think it is definitely one of the strongest in the last while, but it also feels different that it is one of the very few last of the trilogies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Like, very few have gotten to that point where they told their full story.
Yes.
Like, if you think Iron Man, we've got Captain America, kinda.
Oh, yeah, we do, yeah.
And then now... But see, Captain America's final story was told in Endgame. That's
true.
kind of... Whereas, if you think Iron Man's story was told across his 3, and then the ending was told in Endgame. But this is the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy, so I really just enjoyed... This is the end of James Gunn's fingerprint on the MCU.
Yeah. And
this is his fingerprint of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And I enjoyed what that was. And I enjoyed this film as a film by itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 4.5 kind of out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a few quibbles, but nothing major. But overall, as a kind of capstone to the story of the Guardians of the Galaxy, is 5 out of 5.
Yeah, and I think it's really important the way you say that as well, Chris, because it does feel like a trilogy. These 3 movies, you could sit down and watch all 3 of them. Of course, there's connections to the rest of the MCU, as there always has been in most of these movies, but this one does feel like the third part of a trilogy. You know, a couple of months ago, we just went to the cinema to see the third part of a trilogy, all written and directed by the same person, Peyton Reed, who did the Ant-Man trilogy. But did that feel like the third and final part of a trilogy? Absolutely not. It felt like the third story featuring those characters. This absolutely feels like James Gunn had a purpose, had an arc he was going for, and hit it really with this last movie.
Yeah. No, I it's essentially that, and essentially exactly that. I believe James Gunn, like you said, he had a plan. Mm-hmm. He had some stories in his head that he wanted to talk about. And he has stated since the beginning of the Guardians of the Galaxy, he wanted to tell a story about Rocket.
Exactly.
And I think he used this fantastically to basically, okay, I'm going to give you everyone what wants. Mm-hmm. Like the Trash Panda's origin.
Yeah. Yeah, I was definitely alluding to it, and I think as audience members watching the movies, I think you're intended to look at Rocket and go, "Oh, how did he get to this point? Why is he so angry? Why does he do the things he does? Why is he doesn't like other people, or why is he only friends with certain types of people?" You know, and I think that was all kind of laying the groundwork for getting to this third part of the trilogy. Yeah.
I recently rewatched Slither.
Mm-hmm.
One of James Gunn's first iconic films outside of Trauma, if you like Trauma.
Yeah.
But for me, this was like probably one of her. It's where I got to know James Gunn.
Exactly.
And you can see that he has a very particular style and a very particular fingerprint. Be it directorial, edit, and more. In this space, I talk about the writing and like how he sets scenes. And I feel with this, I suppose I just grew to like James Gunn as a writer and a director. And I think it has the way that he writes a scene and the way he talks about his characters very much feels to me that is what the Guardians of the Galaxy is, or I should say was.
Yeah.
Because the Guardians of the Galaxy is like the Avengers in the comic books, in that the roster consistently changes.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, there has been many, like Venom, Iron Man have been Guardians of the Galaxy.
I did not know that, but
yeah,
it makes sense.
Both of them have been Guardians of the Galaxy. Like there are many. But again, this is the MCU version, and I'm glad now they end on this with, hey, look, the Guardians are now under Rocket, because Rocket always said he was the leader. Now he is the leader. But I also like the fact that everyone thought someone would die.
Yes.
Like, I went into this assuming Rocket or probably Star-Lord, Chris Pratt, would be no more. At least Drax, because Dave Bautista has publicly said, he's like, I'm happy, I'm done with the MCU, with my story with Drax, and when James Gunn goes, I'm gonna go, kind of thing. Like, he's kind of not in any malcontent type of sadistic way. He's just like, I've done my multiple films. I'm happy to move on to other things.
Well, he's ready to move on to his Oscar-winning stuff or his award-winning stuff,
Yes.
as he's talked about. He's ready to move on to dramas and move on to a different phase in his life, not playing these movie roles in blockbusters. But also the fact that the first movie ended with the death of Groot. You know, the second movie ended with the death of Yondu. You know, so you would expect the third part of the movie would also have the death of a major guardian, right? Of a major character that's central to the story, and it was all leading to Rocket dying. We talked about it on the main portion of the podcast that there are scenes throughout where you see where they could have killed off a character. There's definitely a moment where Star-Lord could have died. There's definitely a moment where they could have actually killed Rocket or had him die during the movie itself. But no, none of the major cast are gone. We have a moment where they all leave and go their separate ways, and we still have a new Guardians, and we have everybody off in their separate directions. So yeah,
I think we may see the new Guardians in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think they could easily bring them in for the Secret Wars.
Yeah.
Like, they are now, but I don't think we're ever going to get the all new Guardians of the Galaxy. Like a film called that, or they're not going to do a volume 4. Like, that is, this portion is done. I very much feel so.
I'm less definitive than you on that. I'd say we may get a Guardians of the Galaxy 4, a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4 from James Gunn is definitely off the cards. That's about all I could say. But I could see them doing a fourth Guardians movie with this cast and maybe bringing in other characters from the universe to bring out that roster. Maybe getting in a Miss Marvel or a Captain Marvel or some other spacey character within the universe in there. Yeah.
See, the one that I think they're teeing up is Nova. They've talked about publicly. They're thinking about a Nova and doing a Nova Corps.
Right.
I think that's your backdoor Guardian, because Nova and the Guardians kind of play together in that cosmic universe.
Yeah.
So,
and the Nova Corps was very central to the first movie, so there is a connection there already. Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. Like, we may get it's like we may get another Guardians film, but it will be essentially about Nova. Nova Corps, it will be under him, similar to like Iron Man was in Spider-Man: Homecoming,
right? Yeah,
and play a big part.
Yeah,
like that's how I could see you could get the Guardians. It would be a Nova film, but all the Guardians are there.
Right.
Type of thing. I don't think it doesn't feel like the end. It feels like a pause for that part right now, while they want to figure out what they will do with these characters. Yeah. But they've left them on the chessboard in ways that allow us to imagine that they're still going on. They're having their adventures.
Exactly.
Very much. But overall, I really, really enjoyed how this was put together. The emotional beats, and the one thing I'll say about James Gunn, when he delivers those emotional moments, so he usually uses like those pin drop musical numbers,
right?
And he usually that's for his kind of the needle drops, and you're like, oh, that was perfect.
Yeah,
I didn't feel that much in this one as much as I did in the previous.
Right,
like he uses them for more. In this, the music is used as an accompaniment or kind of a point in this as a thing, but it wasn't used as like literally that last song that plays, the original song from the very first one where Star-Lord is sticking around, and then you see Rocket play it as well. That in this one is used as a callback to the very first, because the Guardians. It's like it brings it all back.
Like he underpins the melancholy of the movie itself by starting it with the acoustic version of Radiohead's "Creep," which I mistakenly, just for those who like to find things that I've done wrong, what I said earlier on was that was a B-side of Fake Plastic Trees, I think. It's the B-side of My Iron Lung, just for those that may have caught me on that one, so I can correct myself. But that is showing the melancholy that's in the movie. You know, the needle drops that were in there from the 70s music that he was using in the previous movies, those are moments where you're going, oh great, we have a big exciting space opera here. That's not this movie, but he does use a great needle drop with Florence and the Machine's Dog Days Are Over at the end. Like, that is a big moment where there's a big joyful moment, even though we have the end of the Guardians and they're going their separate ways. The people on Nowhere and the new Guardians are able to have a moment of freedom, and that's really well underscored by Dog Days Are Over.
I agree. Like, for me, though, it's not the same as the battle from the beginning of the opening credits of Volume 2.
Absolutely.
For example.
Yeah.
And again, I think they're just different uses of music.
Yep.
And like, for me, this whole film, we call that, this whole film starts with somber melancholy, and he didn't need it. He didn't need the music to kind of also of like the scenes with the Animal 4, like Rocket's OG family.
Yep.
Chiefs and Floor and Lila, like every single one of those play on your heartstrings until they snap them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I went in with a hormonal pregnant wife who bawled at multiple points of this. And at that ending points with Teeth and with Floor, you're like, them being shot down and then you not knowing until the camera pans back. It's just, I know. Multiple. And like, again, we've seen, like, with Avatar 2, when you see the animal dying in Avatar 2, you're like, they're going hard for these. Like, the directors have, like, we figured it out. The writers, like, we're going to kill some animals and really kind of make you bring on the waterworks.
There is a lot of people pushing back against this. They don't like seeing that in movies. As John and myself contested, this is something that I think needs to be in these types of movies. You know, a safe space for kids to experience these kind of deaths of characters like we had when we were growing up. And if you take all of that out of the experiences, then they don't have a safe environment to react to those things, right? So as I think John called this the perfect kids movie. So you can have the enjoyment of seeing your favorite characters and also an emotional journey for you as a kid as well. So and as an adult as well, to be completely honest. Really enjoyed those scenes. Any other big scenes that stood out for you from the movie, Chris?
The end fight where everyone gets a punch and it has a second, like that for me feels perfect culmination of it was just the camera whipping and it was just them all coming together, just as it all played together.
Yeah.
And just even how they selected it again was just fantastic.
Yeah, you played the video game, didn't you? The Guardians of the Galaxy video game. So that really felt like that moment where all of the team are doing their special skills together to form the greater whole that are the Guardians. It's not just one person punching and then the next person punching. Everybody is using all their talents to take down the High Evolutionary and his crew. So that's what it felt like to me in a great way. That was kind of bringing in why this team works so well together, you know? Yeah.
And just as the corridor scene leading to that final High Evolutionary scene, those two stood out visually fantastically. Additionally, one of the biggest ones is just, again, bringing back the discussion on the visual effects. Mm-hmm. The animals, be it the Ani-Men, if you want to call them that, the planet to counter Earth, where like literally it's all prosthetics.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Incredible.
Absolutely incredible. And a lot of them were physical, kind of almost like Jim Henson styled people in makeup.
Yeah.
And then you had actual Rocket. And because he was he was the main character for this, he was the central character.
Yep. No denying it. Yep.
The camera close-ups on him and his fur individually kind of animated. You're like, you really, like, they knocked it out of the park. And in a period where we have had kind of places where, to be fair, and again, we've called it out sometimes, where Disney across multiple properties have rushed and berated their animated departments and kind of enforced where like, they haven't been amazing. Yeah. They've been great, but haven't been amazing. This was masterclass level of stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, that was just great.
Excellent. What are your thoughts on the other, the two major new characters in the movie? We've got the High Evolutionary as a villain, and at sometimes Adam Warlock as a villain in the movie. Yes. What did you think of those two?
So Adam Warlock, I loved the childlike piece on him is just fun.
Yeah.
Again, see, people are like, "Oh, that's not my Adam Warlock." Adam Warlock, when he first came and was first introduced as him, was basically a mindless child.
Okay, yeah.
When him and her, that was how they came, and it's kind of on brand,
right?
But it was played for comedic foil a lot.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed. I like where it was more Adam, where Will Poulter brought it at the end. Fantastic. Yeah. Also, Marvel Labs. Not fair. I did enjoy the Michelangelo kind of a piece where he grabs Star-Lord with the finger. Just a fun reference of kind of the Adam touching God.
Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
That
was just a nice, silly moment. I was like, yeah, cool.
Didn't catch it at all, and as John described, he was too busy laughing at the face that was being mushed on Chris Pratt as he thought he was dying and felt he couldn't laugh at that moment. So he was too busy holding in his laughter to notice that. So,
speaking of kind of physical effects. Body that Nebula has to carry of Chris Pratt of Star-Lord was a real thing that they built that could kind of flop up and down, that Karen Gillan could carry herself.
Yes,
that looked so real. So if you're on social media, for whichever one you look for Chris Pratt or James Gunn or Karen Gillan, they have the photos of the first day it was brought to set.
Yeah.
And it looks fantastic.
Excellent. And there's another twist for you. Everybody thought that was Nebula carrying the dead Star-Lord, that's where he dies, and what you find out is that's her carrying him drunk out of a pub at the beginning of the movie in nowhere. So it kind of, if you are one of those people that is looking at the trailers for insight in what's happening in the movie, in the first 3 minutes they told you, forget all the things you think you saw in the trailer. This is a brand new movie for you as well. So yeah.
No. Final 2 bits. One is sorry, I'm going to say final 3 bits. One, High Evolutionary. Loved it.
Yep.
He's an actual good, evil character towards the end. And the kind of, it was just, he was a fun character to be killed off. Now, whether he fully killed off, that's the question.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, he's so good. He's a fantastic role. As we said, he's someone you really dislike as the movie goes on. You really get to hate him, and it's such a well done performance. So it's a character I'd love to see back, but I can't imagine how. Well, there's always ways. Hey, look,
exactly.
It's a space opera.
Like he's now like half cyber, even more cybernetic type of approach.
It's just one eyeball and his brain.
Yeah, exactly. And he's cloned another body.
Yeah.
Blah 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 blah. Comic books, folks. The one part I will go also somewhat down on is the continued Gamora Star-Lord. Like multiple times.
Okay.
It was just, I like where it got to by the end.
Right.
Like that they kind of, they're okay. He's okay with it, and she's smiling. She's gone back to her family, which is the Ravagers.
Yeah.
It was just, I think it was by the third Star-Lord and Gamora. I get it.
Right.
I was like, okay, I get it. I like, we see how you're like, yes, it is annoying. We the audience are even feeling it is annoying. I felt it was annoying. So I don't know. It was just, I didn't want to see them back together.
Right.
Because I think it opens up Star-Lord for other things.
Yeah.
But overall, like, it was just maybe one too many. But that was, again, I'm trying to have a balanced approach.
Of course. The counter argument to that is
Go for it.
that this is the third part of the trilogy, and all that breakup stuff and the death of Gamora all happened in the Avengers movies. So you got to have him deal with the after effects of what happened and her death and the return of a Gamora that doesn't know him at all. And the one thing I really liked about the relationship is I hadn't really thought about it until Gamora said, I literally had just left Thanos. So she's like, you know, a week or so after leaving Thanos, she's suddenly in a big battle with the Avengers and being told that she's in love with Star-Lord. It's like, I don't know who any of you people are. I'm gone. So this is how she's developed being away from Thanos. So she is a completely different character, and they nailed that really well. And yeah, that idea of being, you know, hurt and lost after losing a partner and not knowing how to get them back when there's no possible way that's going to happen. I thought that was actually played quite well in the movie, but I totally understand your point though. Yeah.
I agree. It was all played great. I just think it was just that one scene too many, because it was played multiple times to really get the point across. So final point to end, which is I enjoyed this. I want to see more, and I think we may slightly disagree, but I think Chris Pratt, Star-Lord, will return the same way Black Panther will return. He's on Earth now, and I think that's because they're going to make him a more central character for the Kang Dynasty kind of Avenger level ones. He'll be a core member, because again, they've left him on off for that. And I think Chris Pratt will probably come for that, and then something will happen. Yeah. Because he probably will want to go on to other things, but he's there for that seemingly. And they're already losing one other Chris. Pick which other Chris you want, and they've lost him. Yeah. Seemingly.
Like it's such a shame of all the actors in Guardians of the Galaxy. The idea that Chris Pratt will be the one to return in the MCU is such a shame. But I'll repeat. I do think it's a joke. I think it's a James Gunn joke. Look at the legendary Star-Lord sitting at a breakfast table and complaining about mowing lawns.
I think it can be both.
It absolutely can be, and they will twist it if he does want to come back and does get paid the big bucks to come back for another MCU movie. They will twist it to say that's what we meant all the time. But I think at the moment it comes across as a great joke. So
that like exactly, it can be that they set it up so it could be always. I think that's the kind of fun it's setting up. I think it gives us the realm of possibility, the cosmos of possibility.
Exactly.
Because if anyone's never watched it, the Annihilus or the Annihilation event, which was all the cosmic characters in Marvel coming together against Annihilus. Yeah. Annihilation, that was it.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. Include the Guardians. It had Nova. It had Philel, the young Captain Marvel, who we see is one of the new Guardians. Like, all of them were in it. It was absolutely... So if you ever want to check that out, do, because that was a fun one. But I think it sets up the cosmos in a good way for anything we want to do in this the cosmic MCU. And then it sets up the characters in... Do you know what? If James Gunn whole DC little dalliance doesn't work out, it's 100% going to work out.
It will,
but if it doesn't, it leaves the door open. If James Gunn wants to come back, he won't come back. But if he ever wanted to come back, he won't come back. The door is open.
In fairness,
never say never.
Remember, the script was written just to take place after Endgame, wasn't it? This was supposed to be a quick follow up to Endgame. It's been now 4 years since that movie came out. Because James Gunn went off and made a movie for DC. He made the Suicide Squad. He came back to Marvel and is going back to DC. I think they've set a precedence here that if he gets any time, even though he is working for DC, that he's allowed to work for Marvel as well. So
he is literally his own CEO or co-CEO boss.
That's true.
He's like, do you know what? I'm going to write a clause in. Oh no, I have to get the boss to sign it.
It's me.
I signed it.
Good stuff. Exactly. Good stuff. Excellent. Any final notes? Any final thoughts before we go into our defend, Chris?
No, I just strongly suggest. I think everyone who's listening to this has watched it. I'm welcome. Play the game. That's my final note. If you have an Xbox or a PlayStation 4 or 5, or an Xbox One or a Series X, play it. It's on Game Pass as well, I think. I'm not sure. He was on Game Pass for the Xbox. But if you could probably pick it up cheap.
Yeah.
It's a great game, different type of Guardians of the Galaxy, but still a fantastic game.
Yeah, still got the great banter, still got some great fun in it. Yeah, I loved that game. Really enjoyed it. Played it over the course of about 2 weeks, I think. So a good filler in after you watch the movie before you go back to the cinema again and watch it a third or fourth time. Good stuff. I guess that does leave us with one thing, Chris. Did that look cool? Do you defend the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
That looked very cool. That looked very cool. And I am Groot. We are Groot. We all understand Groot now. That was that's actually, that was my note. I should have called out that the fact that we've been around Groot so long, we can understand him.
Yes.
And that was the final line. Oh my God.
Yes, confirmed since I recorded on the podcast. That's what I thought happened, but it has been confirmed by James Gunn. That is exactly what the meaning of that is. He hasn't said anything other than, I am Groot, but we understand him now.
Yeah. I absolutely defend this. This is still, like I talked about it, it's now literally up in one of the top kind of MCU films for me, like top 10. Again, we're in the high 20s now, so I can say top 10.
Do you want to know the number, Chris?
28.
32nd MCU movie.
Oof, that's okay. We're definitely up there.
So top third?
Yeah, top third. I enjoyed where it is on the trilogy. I enjoyed how it closed out. I enjoyed the characters. It was just, and I think it's the sum of its part and the sum of its legacy, most of why I really enjoyed it. But it has the humor, it has the motion, it has the visual effects, and it just has that heart as well that brings it all perfectly together. And it is a James Gunn film.
Oh yeah,
like down to all parts of it. Absolutely. I've already listened to the soundtrack again multiple times.
Excellent. We're going to have cute characters die. You must watch it. You must watch it. That's kind of James Gunn's style, isn't it?
Yep. But overall, I just think this is definitely a must watch and a must defend.
Fantastic. Brilliant stuff. Thanks for that, Chris. I guess that's your thoughts of the Chris's Corner of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Back to myself and John for closing out this episode and some feedback from our wonderful fellow defenders.
I'm sure they had great things to say.
Always do, Chris. Always do. Speak to you soon, Chris.
Bye.
Well, thank you, Chris, for those thoughts.
Hopefully. Well, that was hopefully Chris's thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I hope we've been able to record that and pop it in to that section there. If we didn't, that'll be a bit of blank space. So I'm sure I'll have edited that out as well. So only one thing left to do then to wrap up our coverage of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. John, did that look cool? Do you defend Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
It really did look cool, and I do defend Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I absolutely really enjoyed this movie. Definitely want to go and see it for a second and possibly, I would say, a third time. I really, really enjoyed it. I'd give this 5 rocket rains out of 5. I just love the whole sentiment of this. I think it caps off the trilogy really nicely. I've always been, I guess, a silent or quiet fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies here. Certainly didn't really know anything about them before, and I just really enjoyed how this sort of signed off, to be honest. I think it had huge amounts of heart, huge amounts of emotion. There was some good fun in between, dark and light fun through it. I think it really had some meaning behind it in terms of Rocket and his cellmates from earlier on, Lila, Teef, and Floor. Just those characters, it really, it stung. It was really emotional. I just loved how the treatment of the relationship with Star-Lord and Gamora, just how that resolved itself. I just really think it packed a really heartfelt punch, and so I absolutely do defend this movie and give it 5 rocket rains out of 5. So Derek, how about yourself? Do you think this looked cool? And do you defend Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
I want to know what that was.
What?
Do you look cool? What's that?
It was my Nicolas Cage impression.
Ah, okay, very good, very good. I definitely missed that. Do I defend Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? I do defend it. I do feel there's a little bit of an editing job that was missed in some moments. I felt some moments hung a bit too long. This movie's 2.5 hours long, and I did feel the length in it a bit more. But as you guys know, I'm not the biggest fan in our group of the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a really well made movie. There's lots of very good moments in it, and lots of very good serious moments. You know, this movie, it feels like a much less jokey movie than we've seen from the other two Guardians, but that suits my sensibilities more, to be honest. So I did probably like this more than the first two Guardians movies. I think it's a good capper. I do think there could have been a bit shaved off the movie, because there is moments when, for example, Rocket seeing the animals on High Evolutionary ship, where you're going, he's going to save them, of course. And that felt like it was about 10 minutes of Rocket looking at all these animals, deciding on whether he was going to save them or not. But you know he's going to, so shave that stuff down so you can get a little bit more compact movie. I just felt the length a bit more in this than I was expecting to. Overall, though, really enjoyed it. I'm hoping to go back and see it in the IMAX in the next couple of weeks. I definitely want to see this movie again. It's definitely a high point of the Marvel movies that we've seen over the last couple of years, and a great send off for James Gunn and the Guardians of the Galaxy for the MCU.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, and also, I think I just want to mention, like, I thought the interesting way that Adam Warlock was brought in. Mm-hmm. I really want to see the new Guardians there. I'm kind of intrigued by that grouping, if they ever do get another outing. Mm-hmm. Maybe at least in cameo, possibly in another movie, to begin with, would be awesome. And I do again think that, you know, part of the reason why this felt so heartfelt, because of such a, you know, significant part of it being Rocket's story, was because the antagonist for Rocket here in the High Evolutionary, you know, Bradley Cooper voicing Rocket and that CGI work of Rocket coupled with, the High Evolutionary. And I think the performance of Chukwudi Iwuji, was just phenomenal. And I think, you know, when you have that caliber facing off, and I guess the work behind the scenes with the CGI, that just really made and added that impact as well. So absolutely. Really, really good.
Great stuff. Let's find out what our fellow defenders thought of the movie. Let's hop on over to feedback. First up, we got an email in from Coffee and Vodka. Great to hear from you, Coffee and Vodka. I know that you haven't been able to join us for most of the shows that we've been covering this year, so great to have you back for a bit of Marvel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Coffee and Vodka says, greetings, fellow evolutionary defenders. Been a while. Hope your time off went well. I'm going to have to watch this one again before deciding if I agree with Twitter about it being the best MCU film. I can say it was a solid story, tightly plotted, well scripted, and deftly directed. Chukwudi Iwuji's High Evolutionary was a perfect villain, eminently despicable. It was nice to see a bad guy whose goals and methods we didn't have to feel conflicted about. Thanos was right. This guy was just a dick. Can see the potential of comic nerd backlash for the way Adam Warlock was handled. Haven't seen a dumbing down of a character like this since Batman and Robin's Bane. Still, he made for some decent comic relief when not critically wounding Rocket. My initial thoughts that Swole Groot would go down as badly as Suicide Squad's Joker were unfounded, with interest in the story overriding his appearance. Every character had their time to shine, even surprisingly Yondu, in my favourite scene of the movie. All of this a long verbal walk to say I really enjoyed it. It gave all the right feels in the production, somehow both economical and expansive. A decent send-off for our merry Guardians. Although, as much as I liked it, I guess I don't need a second viewing after all to choose what's best, as I can't see anything topping the Winter Soldier. Finally, my favourite character had to be Cosmo. Such a good doggy. Who was your favourite character? 4 DNA despots, hungover heartbreaks, and recuperating raccoons out of 5. Peace and take care, Coffee and Vodka. So let's answer Coffee and Vodka's question there first, John. Who was your favourite character? His was Cosmo in the movie. Who was your favourite character?
To be honest, I think for me, and maybe it didn't really come across in what we've just discussed, but it's Nebula. I really, really enjoyed Nebula here. In terms, like, she actually felt like a significant linchpin. But I loved the arc that she had in this movie, let alone across the 3 and the expanded MCU world. So it definitely Nebula for me. But to be honest, I think Cosmo is a great runner-up for me because, I mean, I was just so impressed with how they handled this character. And I really enjoyed, the whole bad doggy, good doggy aspect was just pitch perfect.
It worked really well.
Yeah, it really did.
Well. I'm going to go for the easy option. Rocket, of course, is my favorite character because it's his movie. It's all about Rocket and he's so perfect throughout the movie, even as the baby Rocket all the way up to his return. I felt like something was missing in the movie by not having the interplay between Rocket and Peter Quill for, I think it's almost 2 hours of the 2.5 hour movie that we have Rocket on the slab effectively. So having him back at the end of the movie, having that character and his journey and seeing how he came to be the Rocket that we know and love from the previous Guardians makes him my favorite character. So that's an easy choice for me, really. He is the central character of the movie. The movie's all about him. So I guess, for me, it works. So he's my favorite character in the movie. Coffee Vodka says, P.S. Nathan Fillion in a tactical fat suit doesn't get much better than that. A tactical organic grown fat suit that he has to pull on and off every day after work. Yeah, definitely doesn't get much better than that. Oh, on the question of whether this is the best MCU movie, I'm obviously in total agreement with you, Coffee Vodka. You know my thoughts. Captain America movies, the trilogy is still the best trilogy in the MCU for me. And right up there at the top is The Winter Soldier. I don't really see anything else beating that in the future of the MCU. So it will never top that. But I think this is quite a high bar in the Marvel movies. I think we're probably talking top 10 for some people.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know lots of people think it is higher than that as well. So good stuff. Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. Let's pop over to our friend Steve Brown for a voicemail, John.
Yeah.
Hello, TV podcast industries. This is Steve. I know it's been a while, guys, but I just walked out of Guardians, Volume 3, and wow, I really think they capped it off well. Gosh, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. The fact that Rocket was the emotional heart. Oh, goodness gracious. Just really, really good. Can't wait to hear you guys talk about it. Can't wait to podcast on it myself. Can't wait to watch it again and see all the things that I missed. But the biggest thing for me that I thought was great was the way they choreographed that hallway fight scene at the end. That you could definitely see that the Guardians were fighting together in a coordinated effort, with Groot and Rocket and Nebula and Peter, and that Gamora was just kind of doing her own thing in that whole fight. So I love just the subtlety of that. So anyway, that's just my initial thoughts. I really liked it. Derek, I know it's not your cup of tea maybe, but gosh, I love all the Guardians movies anyway. All right, talk to you later.
Thank you so much, Steve. Great to hear from you. You're absolutely right. Derek is the sourpuss of the podcast group.
I am.
Likes his heroes to be gun wielding head of covert operations.
Well, yes,
I guess.
Yes, but I hope my final opinion on this one that it is the best of the Guardian movies. I hope that sways those thoughts about me more, and that's why we have more than one person on the podcast, right? We can't all like everything equally. So I know John absolutely loved this, and I hope Chris did too. I'll be talking to him tomorrow, and hopefully that'll be in the podcast, so you'll already heard his thoughts. Timey-wimey stuff once again, messing with me. Great stuff, though. Thanks so much, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Really glad you enjoyed it.
And great to hear from you again.
Yeah, definitely. Over on Facebook, we have some feedback from our fellow defenders as well. Dan Lee says, I think this was definitely up there as one of the best of the current Marvel crop. I was very surprised everyone made it through, but that's no bad thing. And Star-Lord will return?
Yeah, I was really surprised that we didn't lose a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. It felt like that was what was being set up from the start. We thought we're going in this to watch the end of Peter Quill or of Rocket, or
I definitely thought Rocket might not survive. Certainly when they started doing the Heaven analogy.
Absolutely.
And then obviously the hilarious Star-Lord death with the bloating. I was surprised that he came back from that.
And I felt even with Drax, there was a possibility that Dave Bautista was not going to return and they would actually kill him off in this movie. That would be a decision that they would make. But no, all our major Guardians did survive. Not so for all the cute, cuddly animals that they meet along the way.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much, Dan Lee, for your feedback. Also on Facebook, Ben Rush says, the best Marvel film since Endgame. Actually, I would say it tops it for pure entertainment factor for me.
Interesting.
If Gunn even gets near this level for a certain gent from Krypton, we are in for something really, really special. I am Groot. Good stuff, Ben. Yes, really glad you enjoyed the movie, and I think you're totally right. I think there's a real talent here that is moving to DC. And it'll be interesting to see, because Superman being very different, I would say, than this ensemble piece. But definitely, I think James Gunn has that ability for sure.
Yeah, and that's James Gunn's next movie is Superman Legacy. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It's his next movie. It's coming up. He's already written it. It is ready to go into production once they can do that next year. So it will be interesting to see. Definitely.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. Kathleen Andre says, one of Marvel's darkest movies, but so well done. I wonder if Bradley Cooper would have ever thought he was the story all along. Did not gut me as I thought it might. It was actually a really fun watch.
Thanks, Kathleen. I'm really glad that you weren't gutted by this, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would agree with you. Certainly there is a real darkness here, especially around the experimentation and testing, but also, I think with effectively planetary genocide from one person as well, there's some real sort of dark moments in this.
Definitely.
And I think maybe, feeling gutted, it could have certainly happened to me when, or if Rocket had actually died at that moment. That all this effort had been for vain. I mean, that would have been a fairly ballsy bit of writing and I guess producer and executive producer sign off if they did that. But nonetheless, I think I definitely thought there were a few moments there that would that one of them was going to go.
Yeah, and I do think James Gunn has said that this has always been Rocket's story, that's the story he wanted to tell. He feels he identifies with the character of Rocket more than most of the other characters, so it's kind of him on screen. So it is good to see that they do end the story saying, Rocket, this is your story. This is the story you wanted to tell. So that's kind of cool.
Excellent stuff.
Thanks, Kathleen.
Yeah, thanks, Kathleen. Steph Burke-Stella says, this is the first film I've seen at a midnight release, and it definitely didn't disappoint. It felt like every character was given good justice, and the overall writing was such a fantastic tribute, and James Gunn is very much leaving on a high note. The flashback scenes with Rocket were so heartbreaking, as well as how Nebula broke down when she realized Rocket was okay. I also very much appreciated Star-Lord and Gamora's closure without re-establishing a romantic dynamic. Also noteworthy is the F-bomb moment of the MCU. The one negative or jarring moment for me was the amount of time it took before Adam stepped in with Quill at the end. It felt like it was dragged out a little too long. Thanks so much, Steph. I do know what you mean by that moment with Adam stepping in, because just because he was freezing and the bloating, you had gotten an aborted rescue by Groot as well, whose sort of roots froze up going out there. So I didn't think necessarily Star-Lord was going to make that as well. So I was quite surprised that he did, but it did make it the more funny for it, because I have to say just the grotesqueness of it, there was something that was hugely amusing by that. Maybe it was just thinking it was Chris Pratt rather than Star-Lord sort of taking out the moment, but also when with still a slightly distorted face, did that look cool?
You're still laughing at it.
Yeah,
a day later.
It was just priceless. James Gunn, I think.
Absolutely, he does that so well. Thanks so much, Steph. Joel Sharpton says, I think it's by far the best trilogy of Marvel movies. All 3 in my MCU top 10, and parts 2 and 3 are both in my top 5. The moments when Peter tells Gamora, I miss you so much, and the moment he hugs his grandfather both made me cry. For anyone who has lost someone or said goodbye too soon, this one is a cathartic joy. Marvel will miss James Gunn even more than we thought.
Good stuff. Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. While I don't agree with them being the best trilogy of the Marvel movies, I can see why you'd think that, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they are good. They are absolutely good.
All great movies.
Don't really know whether I thought about which is my best trilogy of the Marvel. I still think it's Iron Man, to be honest.
Really?
I'm joking. No, I'm joking.
You like the third one, and you love the third one, and you like the first one.
Yeah, the second one's a disaster.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love the Captain America trilogy.
Yeah,
for sure. And I like this. I like this one.
The Ant-Man trilogy.
No, not so much. To be honest. But yeah, I'll need to have a bit more of a think about that.
The Avengers quadrilogy.
No.
Although they're all great too. Excellent stuff. Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, cheers, Joel. Trevor Green agrees, saying these characters have some of the best arcs, and this ranks as my favourite trilogy in the MCU.
Interesting.
As someone who has recently gone through separation, the theme of learning to cope with relationship changes really resonated with me. No real gut punches in this one for me, but lots of moments that really hit the heart. Thanks so much, Trevor, because I think you've just probably nailed it for me as to why I probably would put this as the highest trilogy, if not on par with the Captain America.
Okay.
Because I do think the relationships between these characters I've really enjoyed, because the ups and downs have felt really personal, as much as being sort of epic or super heroic. That they're really also as much intimate. And I think when a writer director can nail that, even in a non-blockbuster action movie, it can really, really connect. And I think you've hit the nail on the head for me there. So thanks, Trevor, for coming in after Joel on that one.
Very good.
So yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Trevor.
Penny Lennox adds, the Otter and Bunny have already made an appearance in a nightmare. Ooh, oh no.
Interesting.
Oh no. Sorry to hear that, Penny.
Yes.
Yeah, but understandable that this may cause nightmares. But they are very cute, Otter and Bunny, though.
I think so.
Yeah. Teeths and floor. Poor things. Adrian Johnson says, as I said before, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 really delivers. DC has nothing to worry about. They are in very good hands. I do want to get your reading on Groot's last line. As the Guardians have grown to understand Groot over time, is the movie saying to us, the audience, have also grown after 3 movies and we understand him now? That's how I read it. Interesting point, Adrian. That's exactly how I read it when I saw the movie. We know the species of Groot can only say, I am Groot. So similar to in the first movie when he says, we are Groot, that's the Guardians understanding him for the first time. All that group around him understanding his intention. Particularly coupled with that scene with Gamora where throughout the movie, she's been complaining about him just telling her his name. And then at the end, she realizes what he's actually saying. I think that moment is saying, we as the audience now understand Groot when he says, I love you guys. So not, I am Groot. So, I think it works really well. And in fact, James Gunn has confirmed that is the correct reading of what's happening there. He's still saying, I am Groot, but we now understand him. Yeah. So it's a lovely moment for us as the audience.
Great
as well
stuff.
Close out the scene. Great stuff. Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks, Adrian. Finally, we have some feedback from Richard Blaze. I've always thought Guardians of the Galaxy films were a bit meh. The characters were interesting, but the stories never went anywhere, or they were dragged out too much. However, I do think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is probably the best film after Endgame. From beginning to end, there feels real depth to the characters' developments, and scenarios they are placed in all have a sense of urgency and danger. This has Rocket front and center and shows that he's the real star of the group, not the second-rate Star-Lord fella. Some of the scenes are quite nightmarish. Bunny with spider legs and an iron mouth clamp. WTF, but it does try to get the audience to feel uncomfortable about animal cruelty for the benefit of perfection. Intrigued if they carry on with the new squad and what a new director will bring to the franchise. This felt very much like they gave James Gunn completely free rein and trusted him to deliver. The colour palette is toned down, the music is slightly more obscure, and the story is far more grown up. If this is what he can do with little studio interference, then I'm excited for what he can bring to DC. Absolutely, Richard. I think this, whether he got free rein, but you can sense that he would have given absolute clarity. I do think he probably, and I guess maybe why he will be that kind of Kevin Feige type figure at DC. I suspect he knows his vision and can pitch it really well, explain it really well, and the intricacies of it. And I think, that as much as anything for a director working in the studio system must be an absolute priceless gift to be able to do that, for sure. And I think, I think that the threads are coming through. You can see that the trilogy has evolved, but I love that at its heart there are these relationships. I mean, I would slightly disagree that the other two were meh. I mean, I would say of the
I'd
three,
agree, Richard.
I know you would, but I would say of the three, Volume 2 feels like my weaker one.
Right.
I just loved the introduction of it, of the group of the Guardians and so on. And I like, again as well, James Gunn is having to intertwine it into the wider Avengers Endgame and Infinity Stone saga. So that's another complexity for a writer, which he's able to handle and, can bring something that felt so standalone, but still have it as part of the wider Infinity Stone saga.
The wider MCU overall.
And wider MCU, exactly.
Yeah. Great stuff. Thanks so much to everybody who shared their thoughts on our feedback section for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Hopefully you'll join us for some of our future podcasts. This is not the last MCU movie we're going to be watching this year. We will, of course, be going to the cinema for The Marvels later on this year, which I think comes out in November. Very excited to see that. Captain Marvel, Spectrum and Miss Marvel all meeting up together in space and on Earth.
Yes.
Yeah. Really
we will also have Marvel's Secret Invasion with Derek's favourite comic book character, Nick Fury, returning. Or is he? Who knows?
He is. Nick Fury is going to be back, played by Samuel L. Jackson. Really excited to see that. It is my most anticipated show of the year, just because I've loved Nick Fury since I was about 12. So having his own TV show is going to be really, really exciting.
Yes.
But that's not the only thing we're covering. We're covering lots more this year. Good Omens returns, announced today that it's coming back for season 2 on July 28th on Prime Video. So very excited to return to another Neil Gaiman show.
Yes,
this year. We're going to be getting Gen V, the spin-off of The Boys, later on this year as well. So excited to see that.
Yes, there's What If.
What If should be out this year. That's not confirmed though. That's made.
True.
Not confirmed. Loki season 2 should be out later this year. Another completed show in Marvel. But of course, to mention, there is a Writers Guild of America strike going on at the moment, which has halted production on some shows that we thought we were going to be getting. We know that Daredevil Born Again has stopped production, which was supposed to be out next year. We don't know exactly how that will affect the show, how long it could cause a delay for the delivery of Daredevil. But of course, we support the Writers Guild of America. They do deserve to be paid for the work that they're doing. So whatever they need to do to get that, to get the correct payment for their jobs, I'm happy to support that. So whatever is required.
Absolutely. But fellow defenders, remember to subscribe to tvpodcastindustries.com for all the future content that will be coming from ourselves. And please remember, as always, to share the podcast, because sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the love.
I love you guys.
I love you guys too.
Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back very soon with another Marvel movie as well, because I forgot to mention one. Spider-Verse, yes,
That is
Across
true.
the Spider-Verse
Gosh,
coming out in June.
Completely forgot about that.
Yeah. Can't forget about that.
No.
I saw the trailer for it yesterday.
Absolutely.
It looks fantastic.
Looks brilliant.
Good stuff. So we'll talk to you again very soon.
Yes, thank you, fellow Defenders, for joining us for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Until next time, keep watching, keep listening, and keep defending. And of course, stay rocking.
Bye.
Bye.